What's up, amigos? Commander Jaime here today. We're going to cover a Shiranui standard deck profile today. We're going to use CFE Plus to show off the deck. This is really more of a good starting template for any player that is interested in Shiranui and can actually just adjust this to whatever metagame that they're facing at their locals or even online. Just depends on the vision tournaments, for example. So I really just want to cover this and actually just go over some of the intricacies of the deck, how the winning image is, and then kind of go from there at that point. So let's get right into it. So really the grade 3s dictate the winning image for this deck, specifically Shiranui Oboro. And so what he does is that basically you can counterblast one, discard a card, and actually generate a token by binding a rearguard or a unit in the drop zone and copying that unit and essentially get the critical, the abilities, and all that kind of stuff. And so for example, if you took a ghost ship or a Skull Dragon, let's say Skull Dragon in this case from Night Rose, you would just have a Skull Dragon copy behind the Vanguard, and it has all the abilities of like the Skull Dragon. So it has the auto ability of getting actually massive by depending on the drop zone. So that unit would see that. Not only that, because it's a grade 3, the first skill for Shiranui Oboro actually is that during your turn, if you have 2 or more cards in your solo with the Shiranui name, this unit gets 15k, and you can perform drive checks for that massive domination unit that you just did. So that Skull Dragon clone will do twin drive because it's a grade 3, and so that would follow through with any grade 3s as well. And if you have something like a grade 2 like a ghost ship, it's only going to be 1 drive check, and so it's very imperative to like use a grade 3 for most of the time to get that extra drive check. Given though you discard to master dominate something and then you get an extra drive check, it breaks even. But the point is that you are committed also a board around it to have like 4 solid attacks. So that way you can really apply that pressure. At the same time, you can close the game as well. So because you're putting cards, and if you don't close the game, then you appreciate some advantage back. So that's why that twin drive is much more preferred. Not only that, it's much more threatening. You're seeing 4 drive checks at that point, so more chance of critical triggers. And as you can see with this build, I am playing the 10 crit with the 2 draw. So it's a much more aggressive build. So your drive checks are a lot more deadlier. And I'll cover a little bit once I get to the grade 0s. And then, of course, what supports this, we're playing 4 of the copies of Oboro for consistency reasons. But the main grade 3 that you want to ride is the original Shiranui. So why is that? And so this card has a phenomenal skill where on Vanguard Circle, you can discard a card from hand, search your deck for Oboro Shiranui, write it a stand, and shuffle your deck. So at that point, you write this guy, get a protect marker, use the skill, discard a card, write Oboro from the deck, and you get another protect marker at that point. So you can either discard the same one, or not the same one, the one you previously generated, or just stack up and protect markers. So it really compensates that and breaks even. And you're deck thinning too, so it's really cool. And with this ability, you already have 1 Shiranui in the soul already. So if you go first and you write to grade 3 first, you already have 1, and you just need another 1 in soul. So you gotta ask yourself, then do I have to wait another turn to rewrite Oboro and actually really get the full power skill for Oboro? And the answer is no, you don't. That's where Shiranui's second skill comes into place. When it attacks Vanguard as a rearguard circle unit, this unit will get 10k if you have a Shiranui Vanguard, and then at the end of the battle, it'll go into Salt and draw a card. And then if your opponent has any rearguards, you can bounce one of them. They discard a card as well. And so that card shoves itself into Soul. You have the 2 requirement during your battle phase, and so you get a drive check and plus 15k onto your Vanguard. So your Vanguard's 27k, which is really threatening too as well. We can make these boards, but if your Vanguard's very small, like a 12k, it really isn't much threatening. Thinking they could just drop 1 card and really like, I'm good to go. But with making the Vanguard 27k as well, it's just like much more significant. And then they have to deal another unit that does drive checks too. It just makes it more threatening. And with the original Shiranui being really useful as a rearguard circle, that's why we're playing 4, not only to ride it, but just having access as a rearguard. And it's a 22k beater that you could just drop down and not really lose advantage, but also just synergize with your strategy that you're trying to implement as well. And so there is one more grade 3 that we run in this deck that really helps us close out games, and that is the Mizukaze. So some of you are probably like, what is this card? What about Koku, the crow, right? There is a debate with that, and crow can come up in certain matchups and in some metagames, but one of the things that I've seen that has been pretty more solid throughout most metagames is really Mizukaze. And so what he does is that a rearguard circle, you can Soul Blast 1 grade 3 from Soul, and till the end of your turn, your opponent cannot call the grades that he or she called that turn from hand to Guardian Circle. So for example, The first battle you dropped grade 0s, your opponent cannot guard with grade 0s after that. So the second battle they would have to drop like grade 1s. The third battle they would have to do grade 2s, right? And after that, in standard, you only have grade 3s and you only have the protect marker. Protect marker is actually regarded as the grade protect, how that works out. So protect clans can still kind of get around this, but like excel and force clans, they can't guard and they have to take one attack, and so that might be the difference from you pushing a 5 to 6 at that point. And so that's what the deck serves for the purposes too. So we're playing 3, so we have 11 grade 3s at that point. With this, we have a card like in the grade 1s. Before we touch on the grade 2s, the grade 1s, the grade 3 top 5 searcher, really. And so when it's placed, you can search the top 5 for a grade 3, which is really useful. That's where you get the Mitsukaze or your Shirines that you're missing. And honestly, that's one of the ways that you can fetch for the original Shirine, so that way you can have those 2 in Sol by the time that it actually matters at that point. Going back into the grade 2s really is the Furai. So this has seen different ratios plays. So what he does on Vanguard Circle, when it's placed, your opponent chooses a card from his hand or her hand and discards it, and if it was a grade 0 that was discarded, you draw a card. So most of the time you see this effect and it's just like, wait, they're gonna discard the worst card in the hand and they're gonna draw something probably even better. And part of the reason is that they're gonna drop a grade 3 that is access, and that's usually the worst card in a person's hand, but it also means it's valuable to you, because then you can like mask with domination that unit from the drop and actually get that twin drive immediately. So it helps you set up with that. And if they drop a trigger in attempt to make your choices not that great, you get a card back. And so it's really balanced in that format. Not only that, it has a second skill, whereas the Vanguard Circle, the Rearguard Circle, when it attacks, you can counter blast 1, bounce one of your units, and then choose one of your units and it gets 6k until the end of the turn. And if this card was on Vanguard Circle, you draw another card. So this helps with some advantage too, with that being on the Vanguard Circle. And then Rearguard Circle, you can kind of like bounce around and do stuff. There are cards that allow you counter charge, like the Sakata Fubuki in the grade 1 slot that you could rebounce. Not only that, you could bounce the grade 3 Searcher. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to point out him first, is that you call him, you get the top 5, attempt to get that grade 3 that you need. If you miss, then you can have like Furai, bounce it back for the next turn to reuse it again and search for the missing pieces that you need. With his brother from another mother is Genkai. So during your turn, if your opponent has if you have a token actually, then all of your tokens in this unit gets plus 5k. It's a continuous Regard Circle skill. This is really cool because it makes your token that you dominate a little bit stronger. So if you have a regular grade 3 that doesn't do anything on Regard back roll, then that would become a 12k or 13k to a 17 to 18k. That becomes a little more threatening, having that extra 5k alongside with Twin Drive as well. And then if you have a card like Skull of Dragon that gets massively big, or just big enough, that plus 5k can push like a bigger threshold as well. So that's really useful. And the second skill is really nice. It's when it's placed, you can choose one of your rear guards. It gets the boost ability until the end of the turn. And if you choose a unit other than this unit, then you can soul charge 1. And so that helps fix your columns where you can actually boost with it and make some solid numbers. So it actually makes cards like Misakaze like really a threat and hard to guard your turn in general. But not only that, you soul charge 1 and you have a possibility of just soul charging a Shiranui, making it easier for your Oboro to complete its full skill and have your winning image at that turn, or even set up early as possible for that. So it's a good card. Again, you can mess with the ratios, you can go down. I just put 4 in this starting template. The other grade 2 that has been really good to Nubatama since V era, since the beginning, is Magatsu Gale. So what does this card even do is that Vanguard Circle or Rearguard Circle, when placed, counter blast 1, soul blast 1, draw a card immediately, and this unit gets 6k until the end of the turn. So he becomes a 15k beater, which can make a 15 plus 13k column into a 28k column. So that makes really good numbers. You could also tie it out with other cards to make a 26k line with Sakata Fubuki, for example, once I touch upon him or her. And then with Gale, it has a Rearguard Circle skill as well, auto. At the end of the battle that it attack, you can put this unit and bounce another Rearguard into your hand as well. And so this helps drop down some commitment in the early game where you can actually perform some aggression and actually just return some of those resources that you committed. And not only that, you can make sure that your front row is empty, so that way your opponent, if they decide to attack, they would have to decide the Vanguard, attack the Vanguard to give you a counterblast, and that way you can still have a counterblast going into your Oboro turn, because there is a counterblast usage in there. Not only that, you can fall back to some of the other counter chargers that we have in the grade 1 slot. And that's probably the best transitioners right now, is going into Sakura Fubuki, where this card, when placed Vanguard Circle, if you have 3 or more units on the board, so it includes the Vanguard, you can actually discard a card. This unit gets +3 until the end of the turn. If there are 1 or less face-up damage in your damage zone, then you can draw a card and actually countercharge. So you can reuse the same counterblast for different combos that same turn, or you can get those counterblasts back for the next turn when you just plop them down and get that back. So that way your Oboros can go off, your Magatsugeus can go off, and your Full Rise can go off. You just need that counterblast, and Sakura Fubuki is helpful. So I've seen this card being played 3 to 4, and of course, finally going back to the grade 3 top searcher, he does have the skill where if you have a token, this unit gets +5k. So that's how he gets that 13k attacker or boosting effort, and so that's where you can make that 28k line with Magetsu Gale and some other numbers that you really want to attach with. This grade 1 over here, Saru Moon, is not the best card, but we do play it. With preface in this, we do not have the promos that Japan has in the English. There's a grade 2 and a grade 1 promo that really makes this deck even better, and we just don't have that, which is unfortunate. And so this card is also played in Japanese list too, but it just really, we see a lot of variation with this. But in my opinion, this card's it's almost like your 5th or 6th copy of the grade 3 searcher, really. So if this card is right into Vanguard Circle, then you can check the top 7 for Shiranui. So that's, you have 8 targets to search from. So this is like the best target you could ride in to Vanguard Circle and actually grab that piece. And it's a soft +1 at that point. And then the Regard Circle skill is when it's placed, Soul Blast 1, your opponent chooses a card from his or her hand, discards it, increases units by its power by the shield value of that card. And then of course, it really isn't used that much, to be honest. At least I haven't been using it. It's more focused on the other effects, but it helps with discarding too. If you really need something to be discarded for the effect of a borrow, it's there for you. Honestly, there's Full Ride, there's other cards you force, shield values, you retire Regard, so it sometimes isn't really needed, but it's there to help with that grade 1 consistency, especially you open it with your first hand, you can just ride it. Worst case scenario, you guard with it, it's a 10k shield at that point, so it's really what that's for. We have the on-ride drive starter, of course, Modoi is our boy. So that's why we play it. And again, going into the triggers, 10 crit to draw for heal. With being able to re-ride Shiranui Oboro into the original Shiranui, you get protect markers, so you don't really need PGs as much, and you have your PG draw still. You kind of need that draw still. And I've seen people play 4 draws, 6 draws too, so it really depends on your metagame at that point. If you really need more draw to build up advantage, there's that route too. But the 2-2 ratio has been working for me, but you can try it out, and it's really a flexible ratio depending on your metagame. And so that ratio is worth the 30k shield, which is really nice to just drop a 1-card guard, 30k shield, and just call it a day. So really that's what it's for. And so really with that, that's it. That's the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed this deck profile. Again, this was done with CFV Plus. More to come as well. And honestly, I'm working on this to make a premium format for Shiranui as well. It's going to be different because there are other cards that play a significant role. For example, we have the grade 2 token generator that plays with the premium collection 2020 stripe very synergetically. So those are the things that I'm exploring right now. And then be a lookout for the premium deck profile in the future soon as well. And so with that, amigos, like down the video, give me some feedback. What are some things that you've learned from this deck and from Japan's list as well? Definitely love to hear your insight in improving this deck or even the premium format one too, and share it and subscribe. See ya, amigos. Bye.